Hi there, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Eastern Mediterranean Comfort Food live stream. We're coming to you from the South End Teaching Kitchen in the South End City Market location. My name's Carrie. I'm the one who's been sending you all of the emails. I'm City Market's Assistant Outreach and Education Manager. I'm really excited to be able to offer this virtual style of classes while we aren't able to all get together and cook and eat together. Someday soon, we'll get back to that, but lovely to offer all these virtual options while we can't. So a couple quick housekeeping things, and then I'll go behind the scenes and we'll get started. If you have any questions during tonight's live stream, you can type those into the question and answer box. I'll go back and I'll put an announcement into that so you can see where that is and how to use it. I will see those and I can pass them along to our fabulous instructor. If you're joining a little bit late, you can always hit live. It's down at the bottom near the play pause button, and that will catch you up to where we are rather than making you start from the very beginning and see the loading screen basically for a while. It'll catch you up to where we are. And I will send a survey out tomorrow wanting to know your thoughts on the class, ideas for other classes that you'd like to see from us in the future. And if you do end up cooking any of these recipes at home, we'd love to see photos. So you have my email. Go ahead and email me some of those photos if you make these recipes. I think without further ado, I'll turn things over to Cara Tobin, our instructor for the evening, to do some Eastern Mediterranean comfort food favorites. Cara, take it away.
Nice. Thank you. Hello. Welcome. This is very exciting. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm really excited about these comfort food recipes. These are recipes that I make when, this time of year. These are all really perfect for the cold weather, depending on where you are. Maybe some of you are lucky enough to be somewhere warm, but here in Vermont, it's freezing. The first thing that I'm going to start by showing everybody is this Moroccan lentil soup. It's called harira. This is a street food that is pretty common in Morocco, and you would eat it really for any meal of the day, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And it's really hearty, pretty simple to make, one pot situation, and stuff that you can typically find in your pantry. So we'll start with that. I've already diced up a bunch of the vegetables, but one thing that I wanted to point out is just the size of everything. We have some things here. It's sort of a small dice. And what this does is this is sort of where you get into what is your cooking time going to be and how big do you need to cut things. If things are going to cook for a really long time, you can cut them a lot larger. If they're not going to cook for that long, you want to cut them a lot smaller. So these I've cut on a small dice because this is going to cook for not too long, but long enough. If I was going to cook it a lot faster, I would cut these even smaller. But something like, a roast or things that are going to cook for a long time, you could cut things a lot bigger. But a soup, we're gonna, start to finish, it's gonna be less than an hour, so not gonna cook too long. Some of the spices that are in this are typical of a lot of Moroccan dishes. One of the most important spices that's in this dish is cinnamon. A lot of Moroccan recipes will have cinnamon in it. It's sort of when I describe Moroccan food, the first thing I mention is cinnamon. When I was in Morocco, I swear that when I came back, everything smelled like cinnamon. It's on everything. There's a salad that's a citrus salad that just has cinnamon sprinkled on top. There's a shredded carrot salad that's shredded carrots in simple syrup with cinnamon on top. It's everywhere. So that's one of the most important spices that you're going to want to have for this recipe. Also included paprika, sort of a sweet savory spice, and then turmeric. Everybody loves to have turmeric in their pantry these days, so hopefully you do. So I'm going to start with some olive oil in the pan. And we're not going to cook any of the vegetables too hard. So what you want to do is something called sweating. You want to sweat the vegetables just like you would do at the gym. You want to really just get a lot of the moisture to come out of these vegetables. But you don't want a lot of color on them. So I'm going to add the onion. We'll just go for it. Let's add all that onion. I'm going to add it all together. Carrots and the celery. And we're just going to let that start to cook. The vegetables in this can be, you could add different things than what's in this. You know, the onion, celery, and carrot really are going to add just a lot of flavor. And then on top of that, you know, that's kind of a lot of the vegetable that's in this. There's tomatoes, but you could add some leafy greens. You could add chopped up kale to this, baby spinach, you know, bell pepper. You could add a lot of different things to it as long as you're using the spice profile. That's really what's going to make this taste, you know, like this Moroccan lentil soup. And with the lentils being a key component, but otherwise the vegetables can vary a little bit. There's certain things that I like to keep out of a soup like this. You know, like something like broccoli, I wouldn't necessarily put in this. It's going to break down too much and it's going to overpower the soup. Something like, I'm trying to think of something else that wouldn't be good in this soup. I mean, a lot of root vegetables would be awesome in this soup.
Brussels sprouts.
Brussels sprouts. Yeah, maybe don't put Brussels sprouts in this soup. Good call.
So we do have some questions coming through already. Someone says, I'm intrigued by your classifying Morocco as Eastern Mediterranean. Is this dish also typical of other Arab countries or any countries on the north side of the Mediterranean?
That's an awesome question. So yes, it is kind of funny to refer to Morocco as Eastern Mediterranean because technically, geographically, Morocco is North Africa, is in North Africa, and also really on the western side of the Mediterranean. But the flavor profiles, the style of cooking, a lot of the spice history is really similar to the Middle East. And that's why I think sometimes Moroccan food, Tunisian food, Egyptian food, it sort of gets, I guess, wrongly sort of lumped into this idea of Eastern Mediterranean food. But there is a dish in the Eastern Mediterranean in Turkey, the north part of Turkey near the Black Sea. They have a dish that is super similar to this. The only thing that I remember correctly is different is that there are no lentils in it, but otherwise this recipe is almost exactly this soup. It's this Black Sea region. If you look up like Black Sea, Turkish Black Sea chickpea soup, like this soup will come up and it's almost this exactly. And I think having soups and stews with, you know, vegetables and especially like things like lentils and chickpeas and beans in it is really typical to the Middle East as well. So hopefully that answers that question.
Great. We also had someone ask, let me get back to the question box real fast.
Yeah.
I make soup each week for my parents, so I chop the veggies nice and small so it's easy to eat. Do you have a preference between Ceylon and Vietnamese cinnamon?
Ooh, I probably should, but I don't. I'd say, I want to say one of them is sweeter, and I want to say that one of them is stronger, but I don't think it matters. I think you can use either one. Smell it before you use it, and if it's very, very strong to you, just use a little bit. Cinnamon can really quickly overpower anything that it's in, and especially because we associate it so much with sweet preparations like cinnamon buns, you know, things like that. You do want to be careful how much you use. So I would say smell it first, see how strong it is, but either one should work. So.
Somebody asked, was the pan hot before you added the oil?
It was almost hot. It could have been a little hotter, but it was almost hot. It's everything. Well, can they see this?
Yep. If you tilt it up towards the camera.
Oh yeah. So everything's kind of like the onions are becoming translucent. So instead of being that sort of very white onion, they're becoming a little see-through. That's what we want. So, and I did add the garlic and ginger.
Great. So we've got all the veg and all the seasonings in here.
Yes.
Does the type of olive oil, i.e. extra virgin or not, matter in this recipe?
No, but in my honest opinion, I do have a preference on olive oil. I prefer Lebanese olive oil because it's really mellow. Like Italian olive oils, California olive oils, Greek olive oils are gonna be really that like
Peppery.
Yeah, like that
like
peppery,
burn.
like the in your throat sort of taste to it, which can sometimes overpower what you're adding it to. Lebanese olive oil is really smooth. It is hard to find, but any olive oil will work. Extra virgin is fine. I don't have any preference otherwise.
Great. I have smoked paprika, not sweet paprika.
Totally fine.
Totally fine.
Love
Great.
smoked paprika. Love it.
We have that in the cabinet if you'd prefer.
What?
We have smoked
No,
paprika in
it's
the
fine.
cabinet.
You just want to go a little lighter if you're going to use the smoked paprika, because that smokiness of the paprika can get a little intense, and it can make this bitter. When smoky, like if you ever get something that's smoked and you cook with it, it can tend to turn the dish that you're putting it in bitter. So, but great question.
And then lastly, someone wants to know, would parsnips and or potatoes work with this soup?
Yeah. Yes.
Great.
Yep. Definitely. Parsnips you want to be a little careful with, only because the sugar content in parsnips can sometimes be really high. So it will make the soup a little sweeter. So, you know, don't load it up with parsnip, but definitely that would work.
Someone commented that you can find Lebanese olive oil at Nada Market on Main Street in Winooski. So if people want to seek out some Lebanese olive oil.
You can also find Lebanese olive oil online. My favorite brand is Olive Harvest. I think it's like oliveharvest.com. And that's the type that we use at the restaurant. He's a very good friend of mine from Lebanon. His olive oil is awesome. Okay, so this is starting to get, this is getting close. Translucent, things are getting soft.
It smells amazing already.
Smells really good.
I wish we had smell cameras somehow.
I know. We're gonna salt it now. So salting it now, the salt is just gonna help pull some of the moisture out of these vegetables. And when you salt things, you want to salt them in layers. You want to start out with just a little bit of salt, because you can always add more, but you can never take it back. So I added a little salt just to help bring out some of the flavors of these vegetables. And then next we're going to add the okay, so it says add the pureed tomato, but in the recipe it says whole peeled tomatoes. So what we are going to do, this is a great project if you have kids. I have 2 little kids. And this is a really fun thing to do if you don't mind getting a little messy. But we're going to empty our whole tomatoes into this bowl, and just in the interest of staying somewhat clean, I'm going to put a glove on. And I'm just going to go in and start squeezing and breaking up these tomatoes. You can, honestly, I'll be really honest with you, I have no idea why I said to do this, but this is what we're doing. You can use diced canned tomatoes. You absolutely can.
So you want some chunks of tomato. You don't want just like the sauce texture.
Yes, okay. You don't want tomato sauce. You want chunks of like tomato. It just doesn't have to be this chunky. Like I'm really going to break this up a lot. So diced tomatoes works just fine. Okay. Let's throw this way. All right, so we have this, but first we are going to add the spices. I add the spices now because I want them to cook a little bit before I start adding the liquids, because once I start adding the liquids, they're not going to be able to toast as well in the pan. So let's see. The
Kirsten says, it's such an amazing feeling squishing tomatoes. Love it. So maybe you just did it for the stress relief.
Yes. Ooh, and we all need that stress relief, right? Yeah, I love that feeling. Squishing tomatoes. All right. So let's see. Turmeric. So this is This you have to be careful with. Really, don't go crazy with it. Don't use more than the recipe says. It can really add a unpleasant medicinal flavor to the dish. So go light. But we're going to add a little of this, the turmeric. We're going to do the cinnamon. That was the cinnamon. Again, kind of just light. You don't want it to taste overly like cinnamon. The thing that cinnamon does is add warmth to the dish, and this is where you really get into this sort of comfort realm, because it's not going to taste like a cinnamon bun, but it's going to taste like warm. I don't know how else to say that. It just tastes warm, not temperature hot, but just lovely. So
we did a class last week that had a butternut squash side dish spiced with cinnamon, allspice, ginger, like all of it. It's kind of the same idea. Like, it's savory. It's not going to taste like a dessert. But it's warm and comforting and reminds you of all of the lovely winter desserts.
It's so tricky. Like, spices are so tricky, and this is where, like, what we do. Sorry, I'm just opening this dangerously. What we do at the restaurant, when people ask me about spices, like, it can be tricky to balance spices out and to use them properly, and to kind of know when to stop. I think that's where people become really nervous about using spices, is knowing when to stop, because especially our flavor profile in America, we associate certain, like cinnamon, with certain dishes, and it's not always pleasant when you taste those things outside of their context. It can be, and it's certainly delicious if you do it right, but I think that's where people start to get nervous. So, recipes like this where it's just a couple spices, like, I feel like it's a great way to sort of introduce yourself and get comfortable using spices in your house. So, okay, so I've added these spices. We're just going to let them cook a little bit, just for a few minutes. This will cook out some of that raw flavor of the spices. Okay, and what are we doing next? We're going to add the tomato and the stock. So this, I wrote chicken stock or vegetable stock. Certainly, whatever you prefer. You can keep it vegetarian by using vegetable stock, or if you have chicken stock at your, in your freezer or whatever, you can use whatever you want. You could use beef stock if you have it, mushroom stock if you have it. Oh, I'm spilling. All right, I'm just gonna scrape down the sides. Okay, so that's our. If I scoot this over, can they see it?
Yep. The whole work table's in the view.
Oh, great. Okay. Yep. All right, so the tomatoes in, the chicken stock. So this might seem like at first a lot of liquid, but remember we are going to add the chickpeas and the lentils to it, so that's going to absorb a bunch of the liquid. This is 8 cups. This is a, what do we got here?
I think it's an 8-cup.
That's an 8-cup, right?
Yeah. Now, I will admit I cheated. It's better than bouillon, but I love that stuff.
Nice.
So
that's all right. Use what you got. Man, that's what I'm all about these days. Using what you got.
To get dumped in there if you don't want
to. We're going to get it out. Don't worry. All right. So there's all of our liquid. We're going to bring this up to a simmer. I'm going to turn this back up. We're going to get it to a simmer. Also, we're going to try it real quick just because I want to see where my salt is at. I'll let it kind of mix up for a second, and then we'll see where our salt is at. We need it. Okay, just a little. All right, so we're using kosher salt. That's something people ask a lot. Diamond kosher salt. It's a little coarser than table salt. It's a lot coarser than table salt. If you are using table salt, please go a lot lighter because it is less coarse, and you end up putting more salt in when you use table salt. So things tend to become a lot saltier faster. So, all right, so we'll let this come up to a simmer. While that is simmering, we can talk about other stuff. All right, so we are going to talk about, okay, so the next thing I have on here is lamb meatballs. Kufta. Kufta is a Turkish meatball. It's thickened with bulgur. Instead of like breadcrumbs, like maybe an Italian meatball, you would use breadcrumbs or panko or bread or something like that. This is held together with bulgur. So today, this recipe does call for fine bulgur. Fine bulgur can sometimes be a little difficult to find. And there are different coarsenesses, is that a word?
Sure.
Of bulgur. So there's fine, there's medium, and there's coarse. Coarse tends to be the one that you see most often, and that's what we have today. So if you happen to end up with a coarse or a medium bulgur, you do need to cook it first. Fine bulgur is so fine that you can, it will just absorb any liquid that it's in. So you could add it to cold water and let it sit, and it would hydrate itself. A medium or a coarse bulgur, you do have to cook a little bit first, but you can still use it. So for this recipe, I do have coarse bulgur that I par cooked. So it's maybe a little bit, it's not mushy by any means, but it has a little bit of tooth to it. It's still got, you know, it could still absorb a little bit of moisture. So we're going to use that.
Somebody asked, what about pink Himalayan salt and sea salt? Where does that fall in terms of between table and kosher?
So pink Himalayan salt and sea salt, I typically use, I don't typically use the pink Himalayan sea salt. I think it's really good for finishing. So if you're going to finish, you know, meat or even some really nicely grilled vegetables, you know, you could use it for that. But I do use sea salt a lot, but I usually use it for salting water for pasta or for finishing things, again, like meat or nicely grilled vegetables. It's really coarse and it doesn't always break down the way that, it doesn't always break down enough. And so it can make your, it can make the dish really salty in a way that you're never going to be able to fix it. So I think the coarse salt is a really nice, I think it's the best thing to use because it's really easy to regulate. It breaks down really quickly. You typically don't grab a lot of it to start with because of the size of the grains of salt. So that's what I would say for sea salt.
Bunch of questions coming through. We have
Yes.
95 people logged on, so if I don't get to your question right away, I'm working through it. Don't worry. Somebody asked if you could just use a coffee grinder on coarse bulgur, and I think we had the same convo when you got here. Not quite, right?
Not quite. Not quite. It doesn't break down the same way.
And then someone asked if you could substitute couscous for the bulgur.
Yes. Yes.
The small kind, not like pearl couscous.
Yeah. Like the fine couscous. I would say you probably could. I have never done it, but I would say you probably could.
And then Stephanie has asked, I have almost 1 cup of red lentils, but I need to supplement that amount with other lentils. I have brown and French green. What's the better one to supplement? They're not going to cook down quite the same, are they? They're not going to like...
Brown might cook down enough,
yeah.
But the thing about red lentils that's crazy is that, I mean, it just like really turns to mush. It's kind of like a thickener. They don't stay, like green lentils, when you cook them, they'll stay whole. You'll still be able to tell it's a lentil. Same with brown lentils, although they do mush up a little better. But red lentils tend to get really mushy. If you have a cup, I think this calls for like 1 1/4 of a cup. I would say just go with the cup. It's like a 1/4 cup. Yeah, you're only a 1/4 cup shy. Just do like a cup less liquid or something. That's what I would do. That way you don't have to worry about it. That's a good question.
A lot of questions coming through. I'm just going to keep firing them
at you. Yeah, keep doing it.
How about squash in the soup?
Yeah. Yes. Butternut squash.
Zucchini even.
Zucchini. Zucchini you want to add later. Like, the thing about zucchini that I would be careful of is that it will really break down and it will actually disappear. So you want to be careful with zucchini, but what I would do is maybe saute it separately and add it at the end.
Or the spices like ginger dried. So the ginger and garlic were fresh.
They
and then
were.
The other spices are the dried turmeric.
If you're making this and you realize you don't have fresh ginger, but you have dried powdered ginger, that's fine. Just add a little 1/4 teaspoon.
And then somebody asked, can you just leave out the bulgur altogether? What's the purpose of it? And would it really, I mean, you mentioned like it soaks up liquid.
Yeah, it soaks up a lot of the fat from the meat. So I would, if you're trying to do like gluten-free, well, bulgur.
I think it's a wheat product. Yeah.
It's a wheat product, yeah. So I always get confused because like oatmeal.
Yeah.
You could leave it out, but I would use a leaner cut of meat. That's what I would do. Lamb is pretty fatty. Beef is pretty fatty. I would do like turkey or chicken or something like that for the meatball. Otherwise, I mean, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're still going to have meatballs, but they're going to be really oily. That's all. Or you're going to lose a lot of moisture on them too, because it'll just cook out instead of being absorbed by like bulgur or breadcrumbs or something like that.
How do you cook your bulgur? How long and what was the proportion of grain to water?
So I did roughly 4 cups of water, and that was what, like 2 cups of bulgur?
1/2 or 2 cups.
Yeah, so 2 to 1. Is that 2 to 1? 4 cups of water, 2 cups of bulgur, and then I got the water boiling first. Added the bulgur, cooked it for like 20 minutes, turned off the heat and let it sit for like 10 minutes, and then drained it. That's what I did.
And then in terms of measurements, since we're not going with the measurement
so
of it.
Then, yeah, so I think this is calling for a 1/4 cup of fine bulgur. So I might still, I'll probably do like a 1/2 cup of this. No, yeah, I'd probably do like a 1/2 cup of this cooked bulgur, because I'm not going to get the same, I might even end up doing more than that, because I'm not going to get the same absorption that I would from the fine bulgur. So I would say we're going to probably end up with a 1/2 cup to a cup of the cooked coarse bulgur. That's what I'm going to say.
Great.
Yes. Okay, so can you grab the lamb for me?
Awesome.
All right, so this bowl here. I'm gonna put a glove on just for mixing meat. Actually, let's cut up the onion first. Okay, so I have a huge onion here. We're only gonna use oh, nice, thanks. We're only gonna use like a 1/4 of this. So this recipe really should say 1 small onion. It doesn't say what size, but I would use a small onion, even a shallot or something like that.
We've had some crazy big onions. That is the
These are
smallest of the yellow onions that was down.
It's the time of year. It's okay. Everything gets really big in the winter. I don't know why. Okay.
Somebody wanted to know, for a gluten-free substitute, could cooked millet or cooked quinoa work? Would it be the same texture?
I would just leave it out. I would just leave out a grain. I don't think it would be the same texture, and really the only reason why we're adding the bulgur anyway is to absorb liquid from the meat. So it's not like for a flavor thing, it's not for a texture thing, it's just to hold it together. These meatballs are not like a traditional like Italian meatball in that it's pretty meaty. These are actually pretty bulgur-y, and it's more for texture, and it's just the way that they've traditionally done it, but it really just keeps the meat together, because a lot of these recipes typically are made with lamb, which can be pretty fatty. I think that this is how they would get it to stick together. So so you can do, if it's a gluten-free situation, I would just do it without it. And like I said, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're just going to end up losing a little bit, like some moisture. from the lamb, but it's not, you're still going to get all the flavors. You're still going to get, everything's going to be the same.
This is our call to you. I want you all who are asking these questions to try it and then send me photos or send me recipe reviews and let me know how it turned out.
Yeah, me too. I want to know about it. Okay, so I'm just like finally sort of mincing this onion. I'm going to pull it apart a little bit. I want this to be pretty small. So I've cut, little slices in it. And then just going to slice it up pretty small. I'm not going to do, for the amount of, we have 2 pounds, about 2 pounds of lamb. I don't want it to be super oniony, so we're going to go with about that much. So yeah, like a very small onion is really all you need. And then the garlic I'm going to do on a microplane. So, okay. Here's our lamb. So you can do this. I mean, traditionally it's done with lamb, but you certainly, like I said, could do it with a different meat, beef, chicken, turkey, anything like that. Pork is going to get a little tricky just because it is very fatty also, but you certainly could do it. All right. Where's my glove? Really great questions.
Yeah. That's what happens when you have 95 people who are watching and who all want to know things. It's great.
That's awesome. All right. Oh,
and it sounds like at least somebody's cooking along, so that's awesome.
Nice. All right, let me throw these away.
We always design these classes as demos and not cook-alongs because a lot of times, like tonight, we do prep stuff ahead of time. But if you're cooking along, more power to you. That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do this. Onion. Okay. Garlic. Oh, flip another one. I've got some pretty big cloves of garlic here. I would say like 1 clove of garlic is about, I mean, it's probably about 1 tablespoon. This calls for 4. That's kind of a lot, I feel like. Let's just do like 2 big ones. So I'm just going to break this up. To peel garlic, what I usually do, put it on my cutting board, knife, smash it up. This comes right off. Ta-da. Okay. So then I'm going to do this on a microplane just so that it really, so this is a microplane for those of you that don't know. It's just like a fine grater. We'll do the garlic on this just to get it nice and fine. Because these aren't going to cook for that long, I really want it to, I don't want there to be like raw garlic in this, in the meatballs. So that's why I'm using the microplane. Just kind of rub it on there.
If you don't have one at home, just as fine of a mince as you can get.
Okay. Yep, exactly. Okay. Keep going with this. You could also do this for the soup. I was gonna say for the ginger and for the garlic for the soup, we could have done it on a microplane. So then what ends up happening with the microplane is it all gets stuck on the back. I'll show you what we do. Very
Someone
slippery.
here says, I actually do have fine bulgur. An Irish friend makes her Turkish husband's favorite appetizer of kofta with red lentils and fine bulgur.
Yes.
Try this as written. That's awesome.
Boom. There you go. Okay, so it's all on the back like that. Look at that. It comes off. Okay. Later. Okay. Let's just stir our soup for a minute. It is simmering away. And we are actually going to come back to this and add our lentils and chickpeas. So I'll add these in. And our chickpeas. I get asked a lot about using dried chickpeas, canned chickpeas, and actually also fresh chickpeas in the season. You can So for this recipe, you want them to be cooked. So that's why we're using the canned chickpeas. If you do have the ability to plan things, I do not. But if you think ahead and the night before you soak chickpeas overnight, cook them the next day, then you can use those chickpeas in this soup.
Do you want me to strain those for you?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. But if you don't, canned chickpeas is fine. So don't worry. But there is not, I mean, if I'm going to make something where I need the chickpeas to be really smooth, like hummus, then I like to cook my chickpeas myself instead of using the canned because I can get it to the texture that I want it. Thank you so much. Just add these right in. So in that case, I would not use the canned chickpeas, but for this soup, I think canned is great. And actually, it's going to be a lot better because the chickpeas will be able to cook for longer and they won't break down. So, all right, so we'll let that simmer. And while that's simmering, we're going to come back to our meatballs, our kufta. So what I really want to put in this recipe is something called pepper paste. I don't ever include it in this recipe because nobody can ever find it. It's a specialty product, I would say, Not a Market. Someone brought up Not a Market. They probably have it. But if you can't find pepper paste, tomato paste works just fine. It's definitely a different flavor because obviously one is peppers, one is made with like red bell peppers, and one is tomato, so it's different. But pepper paste is really traditional to the Middle East. It's used in a lot of these recipes in place of tomato. But like I said, it's hard to find, so tomato works just fine. About 2 tablespoons. Say about like that.
Someone asked, would you rinse the canned chickpeas? Yes, I gave those a quick rinse before I brought them back over.
Yes.
They're very salty, the liquid that they're soaking in.
Where'd the cumin go? Cumin. Just taking these tops off. Ooh.
Nice.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
I like to be able to get to it. Okay, I'll use this.
I should transfer all of them into the little jars. Little round ones. It's easier.
I know, but these jars are so nice.
They are. I love them. Somebody asked, is the soup simmering or should it be at more of a boil like you have on camera?
It can simmer. This is kind of a low boil, but I'm going to turn it down just a little. I think this is pretty solid. Like, I think if it's simmering, low boiling this much, that's fine. You want to stir it every once in a while because there is tomato product in here and the lentils might sink to the bottom, so you want to give it a stir every once in a while.
Got a couple questions on recipes at Honey Road that aren't the ones we're teaching in this class. Do you want to keep your recipe secret, or are you okay having those questions?
Depends on which ones they are.
Okay. Someone has asked how you make the crunchy quinoa that goes into the kale salad.
Ooh, yeah.
They tried baking it and it didn't work as well as yours, and they're curious on how you do it.
You know, the thing about that crunchy quinoa is that it is deep fried.
There you go. Deep fried.
It is deep fried. You know, it's a healthy salad otherwise, but it is deep fried. So, yeah, it's kind of a tough one to do at home. You could shallow fry it, but you just got to be really careful. But I do cook it first, and then we fry it. I'm fine letting that one go.
Somebody else has asked about the creamy cheese appetizer.
Creamy cheese appetizer.
Which I have not yet had the pleasure of eating at Honey Road, so I'm not sure which one.
I'm not sure which one that is.
If you want to be slightly more specific in the chat, we can maybe help you out, or maybe it's a secret.
Yes, that would be
Kara's just being cagey. No, I'm just
kidding. I mean, it could be like one of the dips. Grab these. It could be, yeah, it could be the whipped feta.
The whipped feta. Someone else has asked about that, so maybe that's what they meant.
The whipped feta is feta that has been whipped. But we've had a couple different ones, so it depends on which one you're asking about. There's one that was honey and rose, and then there was one that had like tomato and, man, I can't even remember them all at this point. So yeah, more details would be, not sure which one that was.
Great. Somebody asked, do you know what kind of flour they use in bread in Morocco? I've never been able to replicate it or have anything like it here. But a different
I want to say yes, and I can't remember the name of it right now. It's a flour. There's definitely flour, like flour, but then there is another flour that sometimes gets added, and I'm blanking on the name right now. But let me think about it for a minute.
I can also try Googling in the back end here.
Yep, true. Okay, so I'm going to chop up. So I just ripped off most of the large stem from this dill. I don't mind some stems, so we're just gonna fold it up like so, and then chop it up like so. I think this calls for like 4 tablespoons. This might be more than 4. Let's say about like that.
Is the red pepper paste similar to ajvar or a mild harissa? Or is it
no, different only because those things have other spices in them.
Mm-hmm.
So pepper paste is just literally straight peppers. Salt, there's like some salt in it, but otherwise it's just straight pepper. So if you use something like a harissa or another like flavored pepper paste, pepper spread condiment, then it's going to give it a totally different flavor. So something like, I don't want to confuse the situation. Yeah, different. So yes, it's different.
Might still be delicious, but it's going to.
It would still be delicious, but it would just be a totally different thing. Yeah, totally. And this is where like, so something that's really important to me is, making sure that anything that I do, I have really learned the tradition first. And then if I'm going to break the tradition or do something a little differently, I'm just very clear about that, because I think being able to say something is Moroccan or Turkish or Egyptian or something like that, you have to be really true to the region. You don't want to really overgeneralize too much, because there are so many different, there's a lot of different things about each cuisine that make each one really special. So I try to be really true to each cuisine. So if I'm going to say something's Moroccan, I try to really keep it Moroccan. If I say it's going to be Turkish, really try to keep it Turkish and not stray outside of that, because what I want to do is do justice to the dish itself, to the culture, and also the reason why I love cooking this cuisine so much is because I love the flavors, I love the cultures, I love the different cuisines. And what I really want to do is try to teach people. I'm not saying that any of this is mine. I'm not saying that I invented any of this. But what I want to do is show it to people, because not a lot of people know these flavors, know these cooking techniques. And so what I've sort of done is, this is way more than this person asked, by the way.
It's amazing though.
What I've sort of done is said, I really love this style of food, and I want to introduce it to, as many people as I can, and really show people a different way to cook. So when I was coming up as a young chef, the way that you learned to cook was French food. It was French technique. It was a lot of that sort of that European style of cooking. And when I was introduced to Middle Eastern food and North African flavors and things like that, I'm like, whoa, why isn't anyone doing like this? Is so awesome and such a beautiful way to cook and to think about food. The hospitality of the Middle East is beautiful. And so that's why it is very important to me to stay really true to each culture and to each cuisine as I cook it. So that's my long answer to that question.
Leslie loves the restaurant and is curious if you know when you'll be open for indoor dining again, which I know is a conversation in and of itself.
Soon, hopefully soon. We're really trying to gauge how comfortable the staff is. I'm not making the decision myself. I'm definitely making it with the staff. Really, they're making that decision as to when they're going to be comfortable opening because, you know, especially front of house, they have to be customer interfacing. So, but I think it will be soon. The general consensus that I've heard is that everyone's ready to get back to work. So soon.
Somebody's asked if you take the skins off your individual chickpeas when you make your hummus.
I do not.
Yeah.
All right, so I've pulled some of this parsley off the stem and I'm going to chop this up. Sort of not super fine. You don't want to bruise the herbs too much, but you want to chop them up enough that they're not going to be like big leafy mouthful of herbs. So just kind of do something like this. Okay.
I love watching the knife techniques of all the different chefs that I have come in and do classes. It's really fun.
Mine, I feel like, are, I don't know, like I did go to culinary school and I learned basic technique, but then I feel like at some point I'm like, you know what? I feel like I want to do this differently. And so I teach at BU in their culinary program, and every time I go in there, they're like, that's not how so-and-so does it.
And I'm like, well.
And I'm like, well.
Works for me, okay?
You know what? This is just, I also feel like a lot of my knife skills came from having 2 tiny children at home who were like, we're so hungry. And I'm like, like, I got to cook this so fast.
Somebody commented, ain't nobody got time to skin chickpeas for the amount of things I could eat. That's great.
That's awesome.
Ain't nobody got time.
Ain't nobody got time for that. Okay, so do we have everything we need in here? Okay, so we have our spices, we have our herbs, we have our onion, we have our garlic. We're gonna add an egg. Here's this to help keep it together. Okay, so bulgur. Here's, what is this? Here's our bulgur, 1/4 cup. Let's say, you want this to be cool too. If you're cooking this, if you're doing it this way using the coarse bulgur in this recipe, you want it to be cool when you add it to, just forgot how many I did.
I think that was 3. Let me watch, I can watch the replay. Hold on. 1, 2, and then you started talking about cooling, so that was only 2 of those.
Okay, so only 2, so 3.
That's 3.
So that's 3. Let me see what this looks like.
You were gonna add the 3rd when you said I forgot.
Okay,
so
that's awesome. All
that
right,
was your
so
thing.
Let's see what this looks like.
It's great having a class that runs on a 30-second delay. I can just watch it back.
It is. Okay, so the thing about this, the thing that I always learned about Italian meatballs, okay, so I am Italian by heritage. And my grandmother would always say, like, don't, you don't overmix the meatballs. This is not the case with these. Mix the whatever out of them. Just really get in there and mix it up. Because like I said, the texture is definitely different than what you would imagine a normal meatball to be. And with the bulgur in there, you really want it to almost like develop into a dough instead of like a looser, softer meatball. So I'm gonna say that I'm gonna add another 1/4. So that's a cup. So that was a cup of the coarse bulgur. I'm gonna keep going. All right, so we're really getting in there.
We actually did a class on Iraqi kuba that are kind of the same idea.
Yep.
It's like the mix of the bulgur or the other green and then the meat.
Yep.
It's very similar.
Were they stuffed or were they just?
They were stuffed.
Yeah, I love those. I love that. Okay, so this
So
is
for the person asking, yes, we're going off the recipe as it was sent out a little bit. We are currently now using cooked coarse bulgur as opposed to the uncooked fine bulgur, just because of some people are able to find the coarse more easily, and so we're demoing how to do that. So this is cooked because it's coarse.
But even if you were using just the fine bulgur in this, you would still do everything else the same, and you would still mix it the same. You'd want to really like get in there and mix it. You can, I mean, if you could feel this, you would feel that it is like, it's almost like getting sticky. As you do this too, some of the, this is why I think this is so cool. So as you're doing this and as you're whipping it, what's different and what's happening right now is that the heat of my hands is melting some of the fat of the lamb. And as I'm whipping it, it's actually whipping the fat. So it's making it somewhat emulsified, a little lighter. And that's where you're going to get your lightness instead of the actual air between the pieces of meat in a regular meatball. Your air and your lightness is going to come from the whipped fat of the meat. Like I'll do this in a stand mixer a lot of the time, but just for right now, we're doing it by hand. But that's where you really want to get this mixed. But it's starting to get like light and airy and sticky. It's so awesome.
If you're using the fine bulgur, it's uncooked and it's like the recipe,
uncooked.
right? The
Yep,
quarter cup of the uncooked.
exactly.
Yeah. So if you're following the recipe, uncooked fine bulgur, we're demoing a different way with the cooked course here tonight.
Yes. Okay, so, and meat everywhere. All right, so that's about right, nice and mixed, pretty light, a little sticky. Okay, so that's your meat. Then I guess we'll go over to the stove and we're gonna start cooking. Let's go. This on like a medium heat.
You might need to like blow it into the pie.
Oh, it started.
Yeah. Cool. What do you need?
The olive oil.
Yeah.
That'd be great. So, and maybe another glove.
Sure.
Well, I can do this with one hand.
Olive and then the high heat veggie oil.
We're gonna do a little mix. Well, no, we'll just do olive oil. Oh, no, we'll do a little mix. Mostly olive oil. A little canola oil. Just because the olive oil has a higher smoke point, or canola has a higher smoke point. You don't want it to get too smoky. Okay, so we'll let that heat up, but while we're doing that, we'll just start making our meatballs.
We asked how this would change if you used breadcrumbs. Would you just not do breadcrumbs with this recipe? Would it not?
No, you could. You totally could, yeah. I think the ideal, if you're not worried about gluten and you're going to sub something, is like bread that's been soaked in milk and then squeezed out and then whipped into this would be the ideal. But you can certainly use breadcrumbs. I think you could do still like a quarter cup, maybe a half a cup of breadcrumbs, because just for absorbing the fat and liquid and whatnot, I think that would be about the ratio. All right, so I've got some meatballs. We're just gonna let this heat up a little bit. All we're gonna do is start them in this pan and then we're gonna pop it in the oven. So I'm making them about yay big. That.
Golf ball-esque.
Golf ball-esque. Yes.
And then we have the oven at around 400, I believe.
Yeah. I would say, if depending on how your oven runs, somewhere between 350 and 400, 400 being the highest I'd go. We have this one set at 400 because that's the sound we want, a little sizzling, because it runs a little low. But if your oven typically runs right on temperature, I would say like 375-ish is good. All right. So,
you might hear the fans kick on, but the mic should still pick up Cara pretty easily.
All right. Man, so many good questions tonight.
Yeah,
so awesome.
Great question.
All right. We'll just throw a bunch of these in here. So then I would serve this. I don't think I gave serving instructions on this, but I would probably serve this with, not probably, I would, some, pita bread, some yogurt. You could do it with some tomato sauce, like just a pretty nice onion garlic sort of tomato sauce. I think at the restaurant we've done this with tomato, what I call tomato brown butter, which is tomato cooked with brown butter, which is delicious, with some yogurt, you know, drizzled on top. That's how I would typically serve this, but this is something that you're definitely going to have some yogurt to add with this. And, you know, you could do, like, in the summertime, you could do a nice tomato salad instead of a tomato sauce. Something along those lines. I don't know if this is all going to fit in here, but we'll load up this pan and then we'll pop it in the oven. All right. You also, if you don't, parsley is really important for this recipe. If you're not a dill fan, which I know there kind of are a lot of people that don't love dill. I love dill. You can leave the dill out. But I would stay, you know, pretty true to the like parsley dill. Like, you know, adding cilantro is going to make this really different. You could add mint to this. That would actually work really well with the flavor profile. Oh yeah, will you turn that down just a little bit? Thanks. I think I can get a couple more in here. Ooh, it smells so good. This lamb smells really good. All right, we'll put one more in. And then finish these later. Just give it a little shake, just to get everything a little unstuck. And then we'll pop it in the oven. Okay, back over here. All right, so our soup has definitely thickened up. It looks a lot creamier. It's not going to be like thick, like we're not talking like pureed soup thick, but it's definitely thicker than it was when we started because those lentils have broken down a lot. So we are going to finish it up. Just get some of these things out of the way.
Somebody wanted to know if they could substitute for the cilantro in the soup recipe if they are a cilantro hater.
Yep, definitely parsley.
Or parsley.
Yeah. It already has parsley in it. Just go heavier on the parsley.
Perfect.
Cilantro is something that is like, you know, kind of traditional to Moroccan food, but certainly this, you got your spices in there, so you don't need to add the cilantro if you're not a cilantro person. My husband is not a cilantro person. Well, he doesn't think he is, but I sneak it in all the time and he doesn't even notice.
See, I have the gene.
You have that
I'm
thing?
fine with it in stuff. It's when people put like giant handfuls of fresh cilantro like on top of tacos and stuff. I can't do that, but like in a salsa or
it's like
in something,
soapy.
it's fine. Yeah, it tastes like soap.
That's crazy.
It's like making a taco and squeezing Dawn dish detergent on top.
Man.
So I'm like, why would you do that?
Sorry.
Yeah, well, I'm living with it. I'll survive.
I don't know what I would do. Oh man. Okay, so you can never have too many herbs in any of these recipes. That's what I believe. There's like this awesome story that I think about all the time when I'm picking herbs for stuff at the restaurant, and it's like this vision of a man walking back from a market in Istanbul, and he's got like, you know, the way that herbs would be on like the big like pack of herbs, like full stalks, you know, like parsley on full stalks, like 4 or 5 of those on his shoulder, and he's like walking home, and it's like that's very true. Use a lot of herbs. That's something that I really love about it, though, is that like the herb usage really balances out a lot of the fact that a lot of these recipes are like stewed, you know, fatty lamb cuts, stewed vegetables, stewed meats, yogurt, and the herbs really add a freshness to it that balances everything out. Okay, so I'm going to turn the soup off. And actually, first I'm going to make sure the lentils are cooked. So you can just make sure that, dig around in there, check your lentils. These are getting to be kind of mushy. I'm just going to double check that they are not still hard or anything. Awesome. They are not. Salt's good. We're going to finish it with the herbs. So again, I've got my parsley here, some stems, I don't care. Don't waste anything. Like I said, pull the bigger ones out only because they can be kind of tough, but some of the smaller stems, totally fine if they make it into the soup. So kind of just pinch and then chop, pinch it up again, chop. And then around the edges, I find some that didn't really get chopped. Pinch those up, chop. And then I'll go through this way. Okay, parsley into the soup. And the cilantro. Cilantro, I'm just going to find the spot where most of the leaves sort of start and stop. Cut off there. And then we'll just chop this. Again, pinch it up. Chop. I go through one way, so I'm slicing sort of vertical, I guess. Then I'm going to go through this way, do a horizontal cut. That'll chop it up enough. All right. Then let's clean off my. Always need a clean workspace. Okay, so now we're gonna stir this. So I had already checked my salt, made sure that the lentils were cooked. Oh man, this looks so good. So that is your soup. So you can kind of see, that it definitely got like a little creamy looking. There's no dairy in it. If you did this with vegetable stock, it would be vegan. Right? Yeah. But like really like hearty. I don't think I ate before I came. This looks really good.
You get to eat it at the end.
I know. Yeah, it smells so good. So that's what you're looking for. Ooh. Okay, soup. All right, so now while we're waiting for our meatballs, our kofta to be done, we're gonna make something that really could go with the kofta. We're gonna do a red pepper pita. So in this recipe, I did say that you could either roast your own bell peppers, which is cooking them on the grill until they're blistered. They look like this, or you can just use canned. Totally fine, whatever you want to do, especially this time of year when peppers are not in season. You can use the canned and it's totally fine. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna grab some gloves. So what we're gonna do with these, because we did these on the grill earlier, you're gonna grill them until they become, black and the skin is starting to blister off. This is what you're looking for. It starts to peel off. I did after I grilled them, put them in a bowl and covered them, and that will steam the peppers and help the skin come off a lot easier. So it just really falls right off, just like this.
While you're peeling, Steph asks, what's your favorite simple dish to make at home when you don't want to spend a lot of time cooking but want a satisfying meal?
Oh. what do I do? One of my favorite things in that case is, especially to satisfy everybody in the house, I do something. I do like a sort of like a Turkish meze spread. And one of the things that I include with this is I will take like pita and just, under the broiler in the oven, melt cheese onto it. And then in a pan, I toast garlic till it's like nice and toasted brown. And right when it's nice and toasted brown, I add a bunch of chopped up tomatoes and salt, and I toss that around. And then I put the toasted garlic tomato on top of the cheesy pita. And that is like
backwards pizza, or like
upside down pizza. It's like my favorite thing. But like the toasted garlic adds like so much to it, and it's like really easy, but it's like super satisfying. I don't know, something about like toasted garlic that is, to me, one of the most satisfying flavors ever.
Do you do like butter or oil on the pan, or you're toasting it dry?
I toast it in oil, in olive oil, yeah. Yep. So that's one of my go-tos, especially in the summertime, especially. And then I'll serve, like on the side, like I'll bring hummus home from the restaurant, or have some yogurt with like za'atar on top, some chopped up cucumbers, like just really easy stuff. Mm-hmm. That's actually one of my most favorite. It's my favorite way to eat, like that sort of meze style anyway. And then all those things are so satisfying, like cheese bread.
Yeah, right? Can't go wrong.
Yeah.
Someone asks, should you not put the parsley in right before you're serving? Because I think with the recipe it said to add the herbs during the simmering process, but should they add the herbs last?
You can add them either time. I think actually adding them last is better, but you can certainly add them earlier on. This recipe isn't meant, like, they don't need to stay green. It doesn't. You're probably going to store some of this soup anyway, so nothing's going to, the herbs are not necessarily going to keep that fresh green flavor or color anyway, so either way is fine. I think it is actually a little nicer at the end, but yeah, no preference.
Someone wants to know what kind of cheese you use when you do your pita thing.
I use mozzarella, sometimes feta. Like, I like to do a mix, mozzarella, feta, and then I do something that's called kasiri. Excuse me. And it's sort of it's a sheep's milk cheese that's it's a Middle Eastern cheese. I mean, admittedly, I bring it home from the restaurant. I don't know how easy it is to find, but something that's like a little softer, like cheddar soft hardness, cheddar texture, but a little stinky. That's adds a nice. Yeah. So. Okay, we have our peppers all peeled up now. So I'm gonna chop them up and add them to this bowl. You actually could do this in a food processor, or you can chop them by hand. Either way. This is just, we'll just do it by hand. Just to make it easy, and so you could see what it would look like. But you really want to get them pretty chopped up. So I anchor the knife with this hand and just go for it. Remember to keep that way your fingers aren't going to get caught underneath. On this side, they're wrapped around the knife. One's on top. It's not going to get caught underneath. We're just going to chop.
Someone asks if you have a good recommendation for purchasing good pita bread.
I mean, I don't know of anywhere locally. I mean, I would always buy, pita bread here, City Market. But I mean, if you really want like really great pita bread, I would just make it yourself. It's really not that hard. It's honestly not that hard. The way that I think people get nervous about it, because the way that you want it to puff up, it seems really daunting, but I bake it in my oven at home. I turn a cookie sheet upside down, get it really screaming hot in the highest temp the oven will go, and then throw my little pita doughs in there, and they always puff up. And that's like the best. But otherwise, just like a store-bought pita is totally fine. I mean, a pita bakery in town would be awesome, huh?
Yeah. We have a tortilla maker. Where's the pita people? Come on.
God, do I have to? Maybe I'll do it.
Along with that, somebody asked, can you talk about your idea of the difference between pita and what actually is the base of a lamajun, how to pronounce?
Yeah, lamajun.
Are you suggesting pita because it's easily available to people?
Yes, definitely. I mean, you could use like a pizza dough and roll it out really thin. Lamajun dough is something closer to something called yufka, which is a really thin dough pastry that's rolled out really thin, like thinner than a pizza would be rolled out. But this is just, it's the easiest way to do it on a pita. When we do it at the restaurant, I use the same dough that we use for our pita. I just roll it out a lot thinner, like a lot thinner, and use that. But that works, you know, that's like pretty much the same. So
I'm going to ask, would you recommend rice as a side along with the meatballs? And also after the meal, would you recommend mint tea and what for dessert?
Ooh. Okay, yeah, rice with the meatballs would definitely work. Rice with like herbs and like chopped up tomato and yogurt, that would work. And then afterwards, yes. Well, so mint tea is more, if we're going to be traditional here, mint tea is more traditional to Morocco. So after your soup, having a mint tea would be definitely, you know, falling within the category, the cuisine. After a Turkish meal, you know, typically you have tea. It's a black tea. It's a black Turkish tea. But I think mint tea would be lovely after the meatballs. You don't have to do it, you know, the most traditional way. And then for dessert, man, there's a couple things that you could do. I mean, baklava would be a beautiful thing, but that's really labor intensive. Having, man, I'm blanking on the name of it right now. There's like a shredded phyllo dessert that's really delicious. Kataif, yep. That would be really nice. Some like really light sorbet, like a ginger sorbet, or what's that Blue Moon company that does those sorbets?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh man, they're so good. I feel like you guys have them here.
We might.
They do like a pear ginger one that is so freaking good. Something like that would be delicious.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if you're gonna ask me, I'm gonna say cheesecake because that's like my favorite dessert ever. It's not like Middle Eastern, but man, I've been making like a cheesecake a week.
Where's mine? Come on.
Myself. I can't handle it. Anyway, let's check the meatballs. All right. Okay. So I'm just like giving them a little poke and they're feeling pretty close. Let me grab a spoon. All right. Just gonna toss these around. I'm gonna cut one open. We're gonna check the middle. Cooked. Awesome. Gonna check the delicious. Okay. So will you grab that yogurt that I had in the, we are going to, I'm gonna grab a bowl and I put it on this.
You come back over here.
Bring it over here. Okay. So we're gonna pull these out. We're gonna put them on this plate. We don't happen to have any like dried mint up here, do we?
We do. It's one of the things you asked for, yeah.
Do we have any like chili flakes?
Uh-huh.
We do?
We have a well-stocked spice cabinet, yes.
Shoot. Do me a favor and put like a little bit of water in there? Okay, so we have our meatballs. We're going to actually, I'll move back over to the other camera.
All right, 1 second. I gotta
Sorry, we're
switch it.
doing a lot of technical stuff. No,
Oh,
I'll
here.
stay here. I'll stay here. I'll stay here. Okay. So this is just some Greek yogurt that I added some olive oil and salt to, and a little water to thin it out. I like the Greek yogurt for the flavor. Typically, I would use something called labne, which is definitely available at Not a Market, but it's like a really, really thick, it's like thicker than Greek yogurt. So this is kind of a nice pouring consistency. I'm gonna kind of just do something like this, right on top of the meatballs. Oh my goodness. Okay. And then we're going to take some dried mints. There. A lot of that on there. A little chili. Typically, I would use something called Marash or Aleppo. I got a mint leaf splinter, but a chili flake is fine. And we're going to do something like that.
Amazing.
Oh, and we're going to take this over here. And we're going to take some of this dill I had left over. Oh, man. That did it. That's it. And then you could serve that.
Beautiful. Could you serve these in the red pepper pita as almost like a sandwich? Amazing. Meatball sandwich.
Oh, it smells so good. Okay. So back to our pita.
Somebody asked if you could restate the temperature of the oven for the meatballs, and they noticed that you didn't turn them over. You cooked them all on
just
one side.
On one side,
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted them to kind of keep their shape, and they got brown on one side, which is good enough for me. That was about, well, this was 400 on this oven, so maybe about 375, I would say. So, okay. We are back to our red pepper pita. We have our red peppers. I'm going to grab a little scallion. We're going to cut the ends off.
Do you have a favorite brand or type of tahini?
Ooh, yeah, Soom. Soom tahini is my favorite. It's some Three Sisters based out of Philadelphia, available online. It is just the best flavor, texture, the toastiness of the sesame seeds, everything about it. Delicious. Soom, S-O-O-M.
I actually almost worked for them a couple years ago. Yeah.
Oh, they're so nice.
I went to school outside of Philly, and they were hiring at one point.
Oh, nice. They came out with a cookbook, a tahini cookbook that's really awesome. We had some at the restaurant that we were selling for a little while. Okay, so I sort of just did like I didn't cut all the way to the top, but I cut straight down one way and then straight down the other way. So we'll get some smaller pieces of scallion here.
Somebody asked about for dessert namora. I don't know if you know what that is. I looked it up. This is like a semolina cake.
Oh yeah.
It looks like
what
Lebanese.
Was it? How is it spelled?
Namoura.
There's a semolina cake that's really traditional to the Middle East too. It's like a semolina pudding.
Oh,
that's not the name of it, and I can't remember the name of it right now.
Yeah, this looks almost like baklava squares, but made out of a semolina cake batter with rose water and orange and lemon. Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yes, definitely make that. That sounds delicious. I mean, there's a lot of different, pistachio cookies. There's like date cake. Like, there's a ton of stuff you could make. I would say, grab a Middle Eastern cookbook, Eastern Mediterranean cookbook, and check the dessert section. And there's always some really fun stuff to make in those books. All right. Say some of this green part's a little too woody for me, so I'm not going to use all of it. We're going to put this.
Do you have a favorite Middle Eastern cookbook that you turn to a lot?
I have like 400 cookbooks.
Okay.
I'm not even joking you. But my favorite ones, I mean, any of the Ottolenghi books are beautiful. They're not all super Middle Eastern, like they are, but there's, you know, he'll put like miso or like wasabi or, you know, he'll do Italian recipes, but those are really beautiful and easy to cook from. And the recipes are usually on point. There's one of my favorite cookbooks is Istanbul and Beyond. It is one of the best Turkish cookbooks I've ever seen. It's the way that they broke it down into regions. I think it is like most Turkish cookbooks, and I have a lot of them, focus really heavily on Istanbul, which, you know, Istanbul it is like a melting pot for a lot of the country. But Turkey itself is actually really, there's like many regions of Turkey that all have really different styles of food and cuisine and traditional dishes. And to write a Turkish cookbook, you really needed to do it right. You really needed to break it down this way. And this, the authors did that, and it's awesome. Istanbul and Beyond, a really awesome cookbook. And just like a great way to like learn about the food. That's one of my favorites for sure.
Great.
I don't know, I have so many favorites.
I mean, same. I collect cookbooks, so
yeah.
You ask me to name a favorite, I'm like,
Yeah, it's hard. All right, so we're back to, so we have our scallion, our peppers. We're gonna do cumin. Let's see. Not like that. Maybe a little more. Okay. The dried mint, which I left over there. Dried mint. Some of this.
That's Ottolenghi is Ottolenghi. It's a whole series of cookbooks by a man named Yotam Ottolenghi.
So true.
I will spell it out in the chat for people too.
Okay, so one of the things we're going to add to this is called pomegranate molasses. Oh man. So finding really good pomegranate molasses is really hard. Do you guys carry this one here?
Yeah.
Okay, it's fine. It's not great.
I know. It's the only one we carry, so.
It's not great. Because if you read the ingredients, like water is one of the first ingredients, and then pomegranate juice and sugar and citric acid. It's because to make pomegranate molasses, it's literally just pomegranate juice cooked down. And you need so many pomegranates and so much juice to make even just like a single bottle of pomegranate molasses. And so what a lot of the larger companies will do is they'll add water and sugar and citric acid to get it to the point of being the molasses consistency faster. But then you end up with all the additives and it's a lot sweeter than it should be. The best pomegranate molasses that I have ever found is from a company called Maimune. I can spell it. You're like, yes, please.
I will Google.
Mymoune.
Mymoune.
Yes. And they are a company in the mountains of Lebanon. I've been there. It's beautiful. Their company makes pomegranate molasses, rose water, orange blossom water. They do different jams and jellies and things like that with local ingredients, but their pomegranate molasses and their rose water and their orange blossom water is all super pure, really beautiful, well made. They do it in season. It's awesome. So this is fine.
I know.
It's hard to find like good stuff, and I get it. Like I've made pomegranate when I was in Lebanon. I made pomegranate molasses, and I'm like, really? This is what you guys do? This is crazy. You need so many pomegranates to make this.
It's like tomato paste. You're like, you cook down a whole gallon of thing.
But I feel like it's like almost even worse because you need like so much. But it's so good. So, okay. So, and then whenever I use pomegranate molasses, I always add lemon to balance out the flavor just a little bit. And lemon will actually bring out the flavor of the pomegranate molasses, especially if you have something that has added sugar in it. the lemon juice will cut some of that. So I'm just going to add like the juice of a lemon here.
So we might go out just a few minutes over if people have a little bit of time to stick around past 7. We're almost done.
We're so close.
We're so close, but hopefully everybody can stick around.
Okay.
Someone asked, is there a molasses substitute that might be easier to find? Could you substitute in this recipe?
I mean, it'll just change the flavor, but you could do like a balsamic. It'll totally change the flavor profile, but you could definitely do it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to take our pita. We're going to take some of this and smush it on here. And then we're going to throw it on the grill. You can't see the grill though, right?
I can turn that camera on, see the grill.
Oh,
yeah.
Sweet. Okay. It's only going to be for a minute. Okay, let's run it to the grill. Quick.
You turn that camera real fast.
Crank it up.
Go.
You see me?
Yep.
All right, we're just going to throw this on the grill.
And because move the like wok though, because the wok is in the way. You want to hand me the wok?
The what? The wok's in the way. Because the pita's already cooked, the topping's already cooked, you're really just trying to, what the heat's going to do is it's really going to soak up a lot of the juice from the topping and kind of like bake it into the bread. And that's what you're really looking for. I have tongs right here. So we're just going to leave it on there for a minute. You just want to make sure that you're not burning your pita.
Go even fancier.
I mean, if it's a little, you know, if it gets a little, some nice grill marks on it, that's totally fine. But otherwise, really just want it to soak up some of that juice and get like toasty crispy on the bottom.
Now, what would people do if they don't have a grill built into their home?
You could do it in a skillet. You could bake them in the oven. You could do either of those things. That would be the ideal. All right. See, we're getting like a little toasty on the bottom there, but not quite yet. If anyone does have to hop off, thank you so much for coming. This was a pleasure. Hopefully everyone sticks around. We only have a few more minutes.
Yep.
So this is like, you can kind of see that some of these middle spots are getting like a little dry and they're kind of like starting to puff up a little bit and it's soaking up that juice.
Someone asked air fryer, question mark? Could you air fry these or would it make a mess?
Oh man, I don't think it's necessary. Just in the oven's fine. I mean, who knows? I don't know what that would do. It could be awesome.
Could be good. It could dry out the top a lot more than you're wanting. It could dry out the top
a lot. Yeah, that's really true.
Somebody asked, umami is such a popular concept now. Is there any particular ingredient or ingredients in your cooking which you would say provides that characteristic?
Umami.
Of umami.
The pepper paste.
Pepper paste.
Literally that pepper paste I was talking about is like, yes, that's it. Okay, so let's take this off now.
Do you need a plate?
We're gonna run over there.
Okay.
Oh, it's really hot. It's really hot. That's okay. They're fine. Okay. Oh, so then we're just gonna do this. So you can hear that. Can you hear the crisp, the crunch of the bottom? Oh, and then we would take our plate of meatballs. You're gonna tuck some around like so. Put this on your table. Oh man. Yes.
So fancy.
Yes. And that's it.
Look at that, 6:59. Nailed it. Yeah, thank you all, everybody, so much for tuning in. I'll leave the question box open for another minute or two in case anybody is furiously typing, because I know we are on a delay, so I'll let people finish typing. Someone asked, how do you make mint tea?
Oh, mint leaves and a little sugar.
Excellent. But thank you all so much for tuning in. Like I said, in an era when we're not able to gather together and cook and eat together, this feels like at least a small compromise, and I'm so happy to be able to offer these classes to such a wide audience outside of the Burlington area. People are just saying, amazing, thank you. No, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So we're gonna go ahead and log off for the night and eat, because we are so excited to eat dinner. But thank you, everybody, and hopefully if you're in the area, definitely try out Honey Road when they open again. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye. Thank you.